Here's the truth. Apple and Spotify are search engines, and if these 5 things are not in place, your podcast will be invisible. But if you do these things right, your dream clients will find you from your podcast, even if you don't have a huge audience. I'm breaking down the most common visibility mistakes that I see new podcasters make, and I'm going to show you how to fix that before you launch your podcast. Mistake number 1 is skipping out on podcast SEO. So when I say that Apple and Spotify are search engines, what I mean by that is your dream podcast listener can literally go into Apple or Spotify or wherever they listen to podcasts and go to the search bar and type in a word or a phrase or a couple keywords, and based on what they typed in, a search will populate. And if you're not using keywords for your podcast, there's a good chance that when your listener goes to search for a show to listen to and types in those phrases and keywords, that you are not going to show up. So let's say that you're a fitness coach and you help women over 40 lose weight, and you want to attract clients from your podcast. And if your podcast episode titles are something like "Be Like Nike, Just Do It," or "The Pep Talk You Need Right Now." Yes, these are real examples of podcast titles out there. Those are not searchable. The problem with those episode titles is not that they won't get any downloads, right? Because you can name your episode title anything you want. You can send an email about it and somebody is going to tune into it. So in that sense, it doesn't matter as much what the episode title is, but if you want to attract people organically who have no idea who you are, who maybe never heard of you, who don't follow you on Instagram, they're not currently on your email list, you are not going to find your dream listeners with episode titles that don't speak directly to them or that are super vague and don't give any context. So let's compare that to episode titles like "Fat Loss Facts That Every Woman After 40 Needs to Know" or "Best Post-Workout Fuel for Menopausal Weight Loss." Those episode titles are actually packed with words and phrases that people are actually searching for. But here's the catch. They're not just going in your episode titles. You're also going to want to use those keywords in your tagline, which is directly next to your podcast title, your podcast episode description, and your show notes. Podcast SEO isn't complicated, but it does need to be intentional. Mistake number 2, cover art that does not convert. Your cover art is your first impression. You have about 2 seconds to capture somebody's attention. If they are searching for your podcast and your show comes up, your show, unfortunately, isn't the only one that's going to come up. There are going to be other shows surrounding yours that also come up. So your cover art needs to stick out amongst the crowd of all the other cover arts that are currently being shown to your dream podcast listener. So if your cover art is cluttered or hard to read or unclear, then there's a good chance that your dream listener is going to continue scrolling and look at other options. So let me break down what converting podcast cover art actually looks like. You want a clear photo of your face, not a selfie, nothing that is pixelated, just a clear, nice photo of you. People want to connect with you. In this world, especially in AI and just the online world in general, how things are so easily accessible, people really connect with people. And I guarantee you that somebody is more likely to click on a photo of a face than they are a random square box with color and text. A 4 to 6 word tagline that clearly shows your dream listener what your show is about. Adding your name, I would say, to your cover art is optional. I love adding that if you can. Sometimes it doesn't quite fit on the actual cover art, like it just doesn't look good design-wise. But if you can add it, definitely add your name. It's not necessary because once they are caught by the attention of your face, the podcast name, and the tagline, and then they'll see the title, they'll click into your show and then your name will be right there. So again, adding your name is optional. So I encourage you to go to whatever podcast player that you listen to and type in some phrases that you think that you should be ranking for and see what other shows come up. And then as you're looking at those shows, imagine your cover art there and imagine how you can make yours stand out amongst the other shows that show up. Mistake number 3 is the incomplete setup of your podcast host. So inside of your podcast host, you really want to double check and make sure that all of the space spaces that are available for you to fill out are filled out to the best of your ability. For example, you want to make sure that you have the correct category selected in your podcast hosting platform. You also want to make sure that the author name is filled out appropriately, and don't be afraid to add your title here. So if you're a business coach, add your name and your title that you're a business coach. Mine says Pamela Krista, podcast manager, and I've changed this over the years. It'll say Pamela Krista, podcast coach, Pamela Krista, podcast manager. So it really just depends on what title that you want to put there, but that title is searchable. So if you have one, don't forget to add your title to the author field. You also want to make sure that your show is not marked private or missing any other information when submitting to the directories. And you also want to make sure that you're submitting to all of the platforms available. So inside of your podcast host, they should have a group of different podcast platforms that you can submit your show to. So I use Captivate. That's what I recommend all of my clients use. It is just so easy to use and I just love it so much. So inside of Captivate, when you go to the left-hand side and click on distribution, you're able to see all of the different platforms that you can submit your podcast to. And as of the recording of this video, you can submit to all of them in just one click, including Apple, which blew my mind. This was pretty recent. For the longest time, I have been manually submitting through the Apple Podcast Connect app, but you don't have to do that any longer because Captivate makes it super easy now. So in just one click, your show is instantly submitted to all of the platforms. But there's actually other platforms outside of what's available that you can submit your shows to. So you want to make sure that you are submitting your shows to all of the different podcast platforms that will then show your show to your dream listeners. Because yes, Apple and Spotify are the biggest podcast players, but people still use other platforms as well. And so by not putting your show on there, you are just missing out on your dream listener finding you because she might not be listening in Apple or Spotify. Mistake number 4. Not using a one link strategy. You know those Instagram story posts where they have a million different slides and each slide has a different link to a different podcast platform? That's exactly what drives me nuts. Well, when you do that, people are not going to take any action. When you give too many links, when you give too many options, people become overwhelmed and they end up not doing anything. That is why I teach the one link strategy, because it is one smart link that automatically routes people to their preferred podcast listening app. So for this, you can use tools like Podpage or Podlink, or you can even use your own website and create buttons for each player and then share that link to your audience. So you can drop your one link into your Instagram story, or weekly newsletter, Instagram bio, TikTok bio, LinkedIn profile, your welcome and nurture sequences. You can use it on your website when you're naturally linking to your podcast. You want to make it easy to listen. I do this for all of my one-on-one clients, and every single week they get an email from me with a link to their latest episode using Podlink so that they can promote their latest episode effortlessly. It is super simple, it's super streamlined, it works, and it's the best thing for their audience because when they share that Podlink, they're not forced with a bunch of different decisions. They just have one link to click. It's going to be an easy decision because they're just going to click on their preferred podcast player. And now that you've got everything in place to make sure that your podcast actually gets found and it's optimized to grab attention and make it easier for your dream podcast listeners to hit play, let's make sure that your podcast actually sells. Meet me in the next video where I'm going to walk you through 5 different podcast episode types that will help you make sales through your podcast. So click on the video that is on your screen right now, and I will see you over there.